thank you, Ali, for being present here, Mr. Parsa. We're really excited to have you as part of this cogX 2021. As we all know, Ali Parsa is Babylon, which is a company that is in providing healthcare in an innovative manner, covering almost 24 million people all over the world. Even though a company that is launched since 2013, they are extremely disruptive, and it's so exciting to get Ali here with us to understand who you are, where you're coming from, and then later on, I would love everybody to take the opportunity to ask questions because this is a
thank you for your time.
And for everybody out here, can you or describe in short what is Babylon about? And
Yuri, thank you so much. Look, we created Babylon with a simple mission. Can you make healthcare accessible, affordable, put it in the hands of every human being on earth? Can you do with healthcare what Google did with information? And frankly, all day in, day out is to try and figure out how you do that. So when it comes to accessibility, all our focus is how do you make more of the healthcare that most people need available on the devices most of them have, right? How do you make healthcare more? When it comes to quality, all our focus is how do you get everybody to the same, to a standard, same expert who gives them the right treatment, who then helps them through the right recovery. And when it comes to affordability, healthcare is all about in two buckets fundamentally. On one hand, 2/3 of all our costs are is in salaries. Doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals are among the most expensive assets of any country for good reasons, because they're among the rarest. And therefore, how do you leverage them operationally as much as possible? And on the other hand, 70% of all our costs are in predictable, preventable diseases. How do you see a problem while it's a $10 solution before it becomes a $1,000 solution? So that's what we do. I mean, it doesn't sound that glamorous. It's hard work. It's solving problems one at a time. But I'm yet to figure out how do you become an overnight success. It takes time to solve big problems.
So I think most of us can relate to the fact that if anybody is sick and we go to the hospital, then usually it is critical or sometimes too late. So you might mention it may be that a $10 solution can avoid thousands of dollars. Can you give an example of a typical small
you are preventing and also
releasing a lot of pressure on the healthcare system, especially for the last period? So it may be more glamorous than you might think, but can you give an example of one of those short, small solutions are?
Look, I mean, I actually don't think it's about small solutions. I think it's about a human body. Biologically, it's a connected body. Human and mind, by the way, there's no such thing as clinical healthcare without mental healthcare, right? So what we try to do is to see that how do you deal with our healthcare in one go, in one platform? How do you create a virtual health system that can collect as much data from me as possible instead of waiting until I go there, that can health assess me dynamically and continuously, that can have a set of goals and plans, monitor me through that, and then reward me when the thing works. And of course, as it's monitoring me, sometimes abnormalities occur and it can see it, but see it early into get me to the right expert, give me the right solution, and then help me through the recovery. That's really, truly a right model of healthcare. That's how it should be. Now, if you think about it, Yuri, you don't get that. Most of us don't get that, right? Most of us wait until we break down and we go to a doctor and they fix us, right? By which time, as we just talked about, is usually a little bit too late. So really, what we now need to do and what we're trying to do and what many others are trying to do is move away from that industry of sick care to an industry, to a healthcare solution. And I think COVID did a great job, by the way, in teaching the society that it's absurd to wait until people are in crisis and then deal with those crises, as you said, in a hospital. The right thing is try to avoid those crises.
Yep, even the word hospital. And in Holland, I'm from Holland, we say ziekenhuis, which is sick home. So even in the wording, and that is because this is systemic thinking of society for centuries. As this is, if people get sick, they are sick over there. So we are entering in a whole new world. And I know that Babylon, you have a lot of experience with using AI. This is healthcare that you very eloquently pointed out. Can you give examples how your AI as a demonstration of where we can use technology to bring more health to the people?
Look, when something, it's a really good question. I think it's really important before I do that to remember that AI in any field, including in healthcare, is a work in progress. A lot of people get very excited. There was a time 2 years ago that even if you wanted to raise money for a restaurant, you had to say, oh, it's an AI first restaurant, right? I mean, it just became a joke. So AI fundamentally is an automation tool, right? It's allowing to get technology to do some of what humans can do, to allow humans to do more, right? In the same way, and in parts of our lives, we got completely used to it in a way that you and I use maps, right? Or use Google to find information. There used to be a time we used to go to a librarian to do it, or we used to fight with our partners in the car on how to read the map. Now it's like life has become a little bit more automated, a little bit simpler, right? And if you look at self-driving cars, or the promise of self-driving cars, you and I have been around 5 years ago when people said that it's definitely going to be there in 2 years, and today they say it's definitely going to be there in 2 years. And you and I both know that this is a very complex problem to solve, and yet fundamentally easier than the problem in AI in healthcare. So first, I want to tame the excitement or the promise that this is not something that's going to happen overnight. But when it happens, it's all about easing part of the burden. It's about, if I have it's about monitoring me continuously. Imagine a world in which I'm continuously being monitored in the same way that the sensors are continuously monitoring your car. And then I'm continuously being health assessed rather than once a year. And then the algorithms simulate my future based on the input they take on my data, and can predict what can go wrong and can warn me against it and try to moderate my behavior, or try to fix a problem or that it happens earlier. Or when I'm ill or I have symptoms, asking AI what's the relationship between my symptoms and the reality. And it's really interesting. We published a paper recently in Nature Communication, and it was a fascinating model that our scientists use, a counter-factual model, in order to kind of see if something happens, what can happen next. And what they found out, and the test conditions, and that's really important to emphasize, for what the machine has been trained for, of course not for everything, the machine did better than human doctors in many cases, but particularly the more complex the problem was, right? And if you think about that, why is that? Is because let's imagine an ordinary doctor has 1,500 patients, right? And let's just take colon cancer, right? It happens once in 2,000 times, let's say, right? What are the chances of an ordinary GP seeing one often? Well, they're always seeing digestion, you know what I mean, regular problems with things. So by definition, you have biases towards the more common stuff than the more rarest. And the machine can be a lot more precise on this. But again, we are a long way from that. But we will, in the same way that eventually we will get there with self-driving cars, eventually we will get there with AI being a lot more effective in healthcare, to be able to automate so that we can get healthcare to the 5 billion in the billion people in the world who don't have much healthcare, right?
Yeah, but I think that is also your mission from Babylon, to provide healthcare to the world. So that's. I would like everybody, since we have a bit of time left, so people, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I see the question in the chat, and then we can ask. Short question, Ali. I was just thinking about continuous monitoring. So, looking at the future, do you see an integration with monitoring, also with activity, and also with food? Because look at symptoms, and obviously moving and nutrition has a huge impact on health. So, do you see also
two sources of data?
And thank you, Lauren. I
Yes.
see your question. So while Ali is answering, I will your question as well. Ali, please.
Yes, 100%. I mean, look, our health is about our genetics, is about our biological activities, is about our food, is about our activity, is about our biome. There is so many different things that affect our health. And to Lauren's question, is about our mental health, right? So there is no one aspect, and much of the problem with digital health in its early incarnations is that it tries to replicate the physical world, right? So the physical world is based in silos, and the digital world is trying to be unsiloed. So you get companies who do nothing but diabetes, do nothing but, I don't know, that little niche in healthcare. In a way that when Google came in, they didn't just recreate libraries or made librarians more efficient. They said that what is the purpose? What's the problem we're trying to solve, which is access to information? And therefore, what's a novel way of using technology to solve it? And we all know what they did. I think the same is true in healthcare. Solving the problems of healthcare in the old ways by just digitizing it, it's missing the opportunity. I think this is now the time for us to think deeply about how do you solve it with the new tools, but in a different way.
And I think you're proving that with your organization. Lauren is asking what you see as improving actual mental health support using technology, but what is the impact of losing the benefits of meaningful interpersonal interactions? So do you see that it's or something that goes together? What is the impact if we start to rely on technology so well because it does so much good? What is the impact in terms of mental support if we lose the interpersonal interaction?
So look, in everything we do, we look at it, what we call it inside Babylon our care pyramid, which is as much as is possible, you do it with digital. But absolutely, the idea that digital can do anything is absurd, right? Then you need a human interaction, but not all the time. The human interaction needs to be with a clinician. So we have health assistances that help people through much. And by the way, interestingly, we learned that, Yuri, in Rwanda, where there is a massive shortage of healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, clinicians, where we had to rely on non-clinicians to deal with some of the problems in the same way that NHS 111 has been doing for a long time. Then, of course, if you need to see a clinician, why do you need to see them physically, right? Why can't we just do it just the way you and I are talking? And then, of course, 1 in 10 times we are finding we need a physical interaction with a doctor or a nurse, and we'll do that. So it's never about one thing being 100%. It's about a little bit of everything most appropriately.
And it's good that you acknowledge the power of the old-fashioned human-to-human interaction. I see a few questions here. For the GP and healthcare workers, which skill set or knowledge should we improve so that we won't be replaced by AI? So here is the assumption that AI also replaces some of the healthcare workers. But I think FONTIP is mostly focusing on what skill set or we should improve to make sure that humans stay relevant in this all healthcare, patient care?
I think we are a very long way away from human becoming irrelevant. The reality, as I said, AI has a long, long way to go. And remember, even if you can monitor you continuously, which you should be able to do better than human beings, because humans, well, nobody, unless, I don't know, you're one of the richest people on the planet, will have a doctor with you all the time. So, but for vast majority, AI should do a great job in us and in advising and seeing through the simplest stuff, or being able to converse about relating symptoms to conditions and what is the best treatment for that condition. These are simple stuff. Can AI put its hand on your shoulder and say, trust me, I look after you, right? So the skill that doctors need to, in my view, focus on most is, on one hand, understanding how to use the AI as a tool, but that's the job of companies like mine, to simplify much that it interaction, but how to be human, right? I mean, how to give the patients the time it needs. So hopefully we can digitize healthcare to provide enough time for doctors, so time in the human part. Look, I give you something really simple. We took over our business in Britain on GPs delivering primary care. Unimaginable to us when we found that about 30% of the time GPs goes into filling in like forms, this, that, the other. Some of our scientists are now working at listening to the consultation, the AI listening to the consultation, and being able to generate all this post-event stuff directly. I mean, we now automated about 65% of everything that needs to be done after, so that our doctors spend less than 10 minutes, hopefully soon less than 5 minutes, almost nothing of their time on paperwork, so they can actually focus on humans.
Wow, now that is impressive, and that also means that they can increase their bandwidth and also improve, especially in times when we need more care. Caleb Chase here is actually referring to the Apple Watch 7. If you see that as a landmark event or just another small incremental step.
I think all of these things are a small incremental event. I'm a kids are grown up now, almost, and I remember when they sat, that was a landmark event, and then when they started standing, that was a landmark, and when they started walking, running, and then talking, those were landmark events until they became who they became. And I think it's these devices. I'm wearing an Apple Watch 2. These devices will become so good in time. And well done to them, right? They will become a very important part of our data collection capabilities. My only challenge with those are, as I'm sure we all know, Apple or Samsung, they're never the first to innovate. They're good to follow these things up. And I just wish that we can have a society in which a small number of companies don't dominate everything we receive, and we have a more ways of having more people being able to dominate, right? Because number of people with fantastic ideas who either don't get funded or can't distribute it because everybody says, look, eventually Apple will put it in. What's the point, right? The point is it takes years for these guys to include.
So what positive impact if the system becomes more open and not only a handful of companies dominate the sector?
Was built on, right? Capitalism was all about, they used to, I think Schumpeter used to call it creative destruction. Our problem is now, almost in every aspect of our lives, we're now dealing with a small number of almost monopolies, right? I mean, 2 or 3 companies decide what watch we wear, what phone we use, what goes into that phone, 2 or 3 companies decide how we spend our money, like there are 3 credit cards, you know what I mean? 4 companies dominate 75% of all the hotel rooms, so on and so forth. And then once in a while, payment companies come in that disrupts them. Once in a while, Airbnb comes in and disrupts the hotel industry, so on. And what we need to do, the job of our governments is to enable more and more of that. I think for far too long, their job was to protect the existing providers. Protect the existing providers, right? I mean, it's fascinating to me that somebody was telling me one of the health giants, who I won't name, big player in AI, has more lobbyists than entire Wall Street put together, right? I mean, give me a break, right? So innovation comes by people in this room being able to experiment and have the ability to do so.
Fantastic. So one of the questions actually that's in the
Constance
is
asking,
what do you see as the biggest bottleneck to come to a heavily focused AI first health? Do you think it's more about law, technology, patient behavior, or what you mentioned earlier, that politics and the current systems? So what is the biggest bottleneck to advance further in this AI-driven world?
So I think we had so many bottlenecks that are bit by bit being fixed. Of course, politics has something to do. Culture has something to do with it, but actually technology, with it, right? I mean, you're are students of technology, and so are many people in here. This is cogX. I mean, just imagine what happens when quantum computing or biological computing starts getting hold, right? I mean, it's experimental, it's unstable. We all think, will it? It's 100 million fold faster than the best supercomputer we have. Just think about what can AI do sitting on a machine like that versus the machines is in, right? 5G that we all now almost have in big cities are 100 times faster than 4G. Imagine where the 6G, 7G will be like. Imagine what would happen when we have the Internet of Everything, not just in our Apple Watch, but in the clothes we are wearing, right? And the shoes we wear, right? And the data we can collect from that. Imagine what happens when we truly have prescriptive AI rather than predictive AI. Imagine what happens when we have augmented reality embedded in our glasses rather than just being able to push our phones in front of people and do so. What happens when robotics become part and parcel of our day-to-day life rather than a dog that goes on the parks in Singapore, right? There is so much happening in every little aspect that it's making the world unimaginably interesting. I mean, my biggest problem in life, frankly, is my age. I wish I was 30 years younger.
To see the change, yeah.
See it. I mean, it's just phenomenally exciting, and that's just in technology. Don't get me started on what is happening in the world of biology right now. I think the next big businesses in the world will be built on the phenomenal change that are happening in biology. I mean, think of a machine in which you could have a tiny little dot, and then you put that dot and put a couple of elements to it, and that dot grows up to become a tree. I mean, that's a seed, right? I mean, and that seed has been programmed to go from that thing with a little bit of soil, a little bit of water, and a little bit of sun to become a massive tree. Imagine the day we can master that programming of the genetics, right? We are at the threshold of a phenomenal world. In a world that I think it's Hariri who says that in a world that Homo sapiens can change who they are for the first time rather than just understand.
Yep, phenomenal writer. So we still have it.
Ali.
Let's run through some of these questions. In the meantime, what is the biggest shift or change that you expect in the coming years? Because you're still young. You still have many years to go, Ali. So what investment or change that you see Babylon will go to the next phase in the coming year?
Is that related to Babylon, or is that related to the general changes we are seeing?
general changes in which you would like to play a role in?
I think, yeah, I think the general changes I just mentioned about what's happening in technology. I think in biology, maybe I use. I mean, look, we're seeing incredible work on immune therapy, organ reconstruction, nanosurgery, all this stuff that we've been dreaming about are starting to deliver a promise. But we're now starting to see a completely new chapter in biology. We're seeing a world in which we can take the gene of a jellyfish, mix it with the gene of a fish, and create a radiant fish. We can take the gene of a bird, inject it into a rat, and the rat starts singing like a bird. We've seen worms that can be made to live 10 times longer, monkeys that can become 6 times, or rats who can become 6 times more intelligent. We can see tomatoes where we stopped at the deterioration of telomeres in them, so they almost have eternal life. This start of synthetic biology, molecular biology, I just think it's going to fundamentally change everything for us. And as you mix that with robotics and create these cyborgs, so I think the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we'll see a fantastic change in everything we have. And with it will give us incredible opportunities. They will also give us incredible threats and responsibilities. And it's going to be times of constraints, right?
Yep, that's interesting that you mentioned threats and risks. There is one question here from Rohit Putti. Even in a regulated environment like healthcare, ethical issues like Theranos come forward in diagnostic methods of the move fast, break things up tech AI culture.
I think it's a real question. Getting the balance between progress and safety, it's, in my view, should be the #1 role of our regulators. I think those who think that there should be no regulation in healthcare, they should just remember why we created the like of FDA. People used to sell snake oil, right? And like I go on the internet, somebody's trying to sell me something so that I can grow hair or become taller or all this nonsense, right? So the regulation has a fundamental role to play. And my advice to entrepreneurs is the advice my mother used to give me, which is never to bend the rules because you never know when it breaks, right? It's like a tree, right? So the rules are the rules. We need to figure out how do we push them to their limits without exceeding them. It's a big responsibility on all of us. I am sure that, and as you do so, I'm sure we all will make mistakes. We all sometimes will go too far, and we all sometimes will go too little. I mean, I don't want to make a comment about Theranos because I don't want to make judgments by journalism. So I read the book, but there is a trial going on, and let's see what comes out of the trial. But if you were to believe the book, basically it was lack of experience, and it was greed, and it was rushing it, and it was pressure from investors, all of that took over from basically what is rule in healthcare, which is first do no harm. That's the first thing everybody does. But look, it's a hard thing to balance, but it's our #1 duty to balance, because you could just say, look, I want to be safe and do nothing, right? I mean, obviously, or you could say, I'm going to, and who cares if a few people get damaged? I mean, that's not human. It's inhuman to think that way, right? So you got to get the balance.
So how do you stay? How do you maintain a moral compass and while change society and be disruptive at the same time?
As I said, it's really hard, but it's each of our to do so. I mean, we try to make sure that as many people as possible are consulted. I mean, we're also lucky that everything we do is under so much scrutiny, and we have some people who have a passion to prove the things that we do wrong or right, doesn't matter. But both of them are incredibly helpful. Even our biggest critics are people who are helping us to constantly screw up, right? Because when we do, they amplify it, which allows us to fix it. But look, important to just keep an eye out.
Fantastic. So as a final question, because there's still that we don't have time to answer, because right now time is up, and we have phenomenal lineup of other great speakers and lots of content. So what is your general advice for everybody, all entrepreneurs here, or people that want to be part? They want to be part of AI, using new and moving forward as an entrepreneur as well. What is your general advice for people with a big dream, but they see resistance with NHS or other regulations? As an entrepreneur, what's your general advice as a final we say our goodbyes?
Look, I mean, I just think that who am I to give anybody advice, right? I mean, my children have figured that one out, and they started ignoring it. So I just think that we all have to find our own way. But the obvious thing is tenacity. Don't give up. Just don't give up, right? Just keep going. And if you knock on a door and it doesn't open, go to the next door. And if you knock on a country and it doesn't open, go to the next country. Look, we have spent many years in UK. We made some progress. We didn't make some progress. We probably took too long to go to United States, right? If you tell me what we got wrong more. And we went to United States 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and we are exploding. The demand is so huge on what we're doing that we just are trying to keep up. So what are your sorry to interrupt you, but what are your drivers? Because you are in Rwanda, you're in the US, you're in the UK. Questions from Basil Akhaldi, who said, what are your drivers to choose or penetrate in certain countries? So you are involved in a few countries. How do you determine the right countries? We are actually not in that many countries where we deliver our clinical services. We deliver our software in many places, but we do it in UK. We were born in UK. Our mission is to make healthcare accessible, affordable, put it in the hands of every human being. That means that we went to Rwanda, a country that is economically very different than UK, to stay true to our mission. So we actually now do as many consultations in Rwanda as we do in the rest of the world, because we like to keep the balance that way. And then we went to Canada because we frankly thought that we need to have a middle step before we go to United States. That for healthcare, US is by far the largest market in the world. It's 40% of all the expenditure in healthcare. It's probably 60% of all the disposable expenditure in healthcare. Because as you know, in Netherlands, whatever your expenditure is, 95% of that is written off by all the salaries and hospitals and everything the system needs to maintain. So the amount they have to is very little. For the next couple of years, our focus is just to win in US. We think that we have a platform that we built really diligently and well, and it's going to work really well in the US. We're seeing a huge amount of demand. We need to get it right. And after that, we're very bullish about Asia. We think that Asia has probably the largest healthcare market, fastest growing healthcare market in the world, and probably will have the largest healthcare market in the world in the next decade. So that's our plan for now. But look, I was born in the Middle East, and in Middle East they say if you want God to laugh, you give her your 2-year plan. I mean, who knows? The rule number one of entrepreneurship, and I think with that, is persistence, but it's also flexibility. You need to kind of smell your way through the right solutions. None of us, we're all in uncharted territory. Any of us who pretends they know what's around the corner, we don't. Our job is not to be sure. Our job is to be flexible and think on your feet and keep going. Persistence and flexibility. Yuri, thank you so much for your time. All of those who've been listening, I'm grateful for you to give me the honor to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you as well, Mr. Parsa Ali. Thank you so much. And hopefully we have the chance to see you again. You mentioned a lot of things about how technology and healthcare is changing in the future, and also advice from a parent as well. So let's all enjoy the journey for the next decades to come. And I hope that the world of healthcare will enjoy your passion and drive for many more years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Yuri.
All right. Thank you, the audience. See you next time.